The story begins with the two figures, their identities obscured by the solemnity of the moment, cross their arms in a ritualistic embrace, each holding a small cup. They engage in a cross-cup toast, a physical vow to unify body and soul as partners, a ceremony where the quality of the union relies entirely on the depth of their love, regardless of whether the partner breathes or resides in the afterlife. Inside a grand, traditional estate, two maids push a cart laden with tea sets, their whispers filling the hallway as they lament being tricked again by a shady pair operating a business within the residence. They discuss the guests, specifically a desperate woman who arrived seeking a spirit marriage, a practice that binds the living to the dead. The guest, Lady Jing, bursts into the room, clutching a newspaper advertisement, her desperation evident as she pleads with a man in a suit to perform the ceremony, promising money and begging for the chance to fulfill a broken promise of marriage. She clutches the man's lapels, her face buried in his chest, confessing that her love persists even now. The man, maintaining a professional distance, asks her to raise her face. A woman with long, pale hair enters the room, introducing herself as Ruaro Urara, a spirit marriage consultant for the Rashiku agency. She assures Lady Jing that they will provide the finest spirit wedding. Urara explains that while customs vary across eras, sometimes used to prevent curses, comfort lonely spirits, or continue a family line, their agency focuses on a ceremony themed around love. Lady Jing, a 27-year-old jewelry artisan, composes herself and presents a photograph of her late fiancé, Shungai. She reveals that he died in an accident 3 years prior. The male associate, Mitojo, examines the photo while Urara observes Lady Jing with an intense, almost predatory gaze, noting that Jing is fortunate to have chosen him. Jing accepts tea from the maids, though she notices Urara staring at her curiously. Mitojo dismisses Urara's intensity and presents a simple proposition: pledge her love. He explains the format is a witness-style ceremony, allowing for either an intimate home affair or a lavish party, where the client holds a ceremony with the deceased. Jing's eyes widen at the possibility of finally retrieving Shungai. She expresses a desire to wear her mother's dress but hesitates, clutching the pen, insisting that she cannot decide alone and wishes to plan the event with Shungai. She asks when she can see him. Mitojo's expression shifts to a cold, professional smile as he clarifies the reality: Shungai is dead and cannot be revived or summoned. The ceremony involves an actor standing in for the deceased. Living together afterward is impossible. Jing recoils, realizing the Shungai she would marry is merely a role played by a stranger. The weight of her foolishness crashes down on her. She spent hours dressing up and dragged her heavy body there, only to find a farce. She denounces it as fake and prepares to leave, while Mitojo signals the maids to escort her out. However, he stops her with a piercing question, asking how much meaning her unrequited, undeliverable longing for the dead truly holds compared to his childish make-believe. He suggests that the very lack of meaning is what allows the ritual to become real. Outside, the maids watch Jing leave, noting how much she has changed from the lively woman she once was. Since Shungai's death, he drowned saving a child 3 years ago, Jing has withered, finding it hard to even get out of bed. She has spiraled into the mystical, hiring mediums and joining religious study groups, unable to accept his death, repeatedly getting swindled in her desperation to bring him back. Mitojo observes her departure, noting that her desperation is straightforward rather than stuck. Jing's mind drifts to a memory of Shungai instructing her as they crafted silver rings together. He insisted on finishing them by hand to build a shared memory for the home they would create. He gently scolded her for cutting corners, his hands guiding hers on the metal flute. This memory bleeds into the stark reality of his funeral, where his portrait sat framed by white flowers. Guests whispered about his heroism and his kindness to his aunt, unaware of the void he left beside Jing. He died leaving her behind, unable to sit in the family seats, broken by the promise he failed to keep. Jing stands alone in her apartment, staring at the unfinished rings. She acknowledges he was a good man, the kind she believed in, yet a dark thought festers. If she had wished for the child to die instead, she would be denying his goodness. Her grief has curdled into a lingering anger, resentful that his death became a beautiful story while she was left with nothing but move-on platitudes. She sits in a diner, pushing food around her plate, overhearing others discuss psychics, realizing her anger is blurring at the edges. Mitojo intercepts her on the street, claiming he was on his way to her estate. Jing tries to brush him off, insisting she refused the ceremony. She lists the things she still has friends, cheesecake, maids, a house, money, work, desperately trying to prove she isn't pathetic. But her facade crumbles. She screams that she refuses to play house with a ghost, to hold up a fake love built on resentment. She knows no one is to blame and he isn't coming back, but the pain stems from her belief that she is the one who cannot love him correctly anymore. Mitojo smiles, arguing that the meaninglessness is the best part. He asks if she is running to escape, to stall time, or to be happy. He grabs her hand, urging her not to let her love be stolen by the afterlife. He challenges her to throw her love back at the unfair world, to make her backwardness a reason to live, offering his hand to help her reclaim it. Tears stream down Jing's face as she declares she loves him and refuses to let go. Back at the agency, Jing signs the spirit marriage certificate, which doubles as a contract. Mitojo pricks her finger to create a blood seal, binding the agreement. Jing wavers, asking, "This is really okay?" And Mitojo advises her to think of this as the final time she will be tricked. With the contract complete, preparations begin immediately. Jing postpones her work, citing illness, to focus on the ceremony. Mitojo instructs her to internalize the script that makes the role of Shungai feel real and to not avert her eyes from his flaws or habits. During a garden meeting, Jing reveals the unfinished wedding rings she made with Shungai. Mitojo examines them, praising the love he feels in them, and suggests adding a ring exchange to the ceremony. He then introduces the actor who will play the groom, the female consultant, Urara. Jing is bewildered, stammering that Urara is a woman. Mitojo insists that appearance is irrelevant, as long as the feelings are real, the role is what matters. Urara enters the scene dressed in a suit, her demeanor shifting completely. Mitojo announces, "Entrance granted," and Urara's eyes sharpen, capturing Shungai's form with terrifying accuracy. Jing flinches, sensing the shift from pretend to theater. Later, Urara works on polishing the rings. Jing watches, distressed that the stranger is nothing like Shungai. Urara asks Jing to try on the ring to check the size, her voice and mannerisms abrupt. As Urara files the ring, she scolds Jing for being sloppy, echoing the exact words and tone Shungai used in Jing's memory. Jing freezes, the sensation of the file and the scolding voice triggering a wave of nostalgia. The day of the ceremony arrives. The agency transforms Jing's living room into a wedding venue, Mitojo noting that the house where they were meant to live is the perfect setting. The maids help Jing into her mother's dress, arranging the long train. Mitojo directs Jing to enter first, followed by Lord Shungai. Jing stands at the altar, holding a cup of wine. She glances at Urara, who is now fully in character as Shungai, and whispers a question. Was their meeting really a coincidence? Urara, maintaining the persona, ignores the meta-question and focuses on the ritual, reminding her that a true vow of love depends on her. Mitojo watches from the side, satisfied. During the ring exchange, Jing's nerves get the better of her, and she fumbles, trying to place the ring on the wrong finger. Urara laughs, a genuine, familiar laugh, and chides her for mixing up fingers, calling her careless just as Shungai would have. She gently takes Jing's hand to correct her. Jing stammers, overwhelmed by the realism. They proceed to the cup of vows. Jing looks into Urara's eyes, seeing Shungai reflected there. She admits she is hopeless and has always been this way. As they drink, Jing internalizes her resolve. She will show him she can live in this cruel world, but she will still live loving him, refusing to ever move on. The ceremony concludes. A bell rings, breaking the spell. Urara immediately drops character, flustered and apologetic for getting carried away and touching Jing's face. She reverts to a shy, awkward demeanor, a stark contrast to the confident groom she just portrayed. Jing is stunned but accepts the shift, deciding to let the fiction end sweetly. Later, the agency delivers the wedding photos. Jing, looking peaceful, asks to keep one for her office. Mitojo explains that Urara is unbelievably shy but possesses the courage to ignore reality when acting. Jing admits she knows she isn't really his wife and that reality remains unchanged. However, she is grateful for the fleeting make-believe that allowed her to remember his face and smile, something she had struggled to do for so long. Mitojo watches her, noting that her rings are filled with love. Urara, observing the photos, marvels at the radiance of the love she witnessed, calling it a gentle, cruel masterpiece, revealing her fascination with emotions she herself does not possess. A hazy, monochrome memory, a fragment of a performance or perhaps a lost reality, where a figure with long, dark hair praises their partner's acting. Intimacy radiates from the panel as the speaker describes how every gesture and glance transforms into words, a silent language shared between two souls. In this shared space, they exchange what was lost, discovering feelings previously unknown, culminating in the title card for Episode 2, Clumsy Love. The scene shifts to a sharp close-up of a gloved hand snapping fingers, a demand for good work to earn a reward, though the speaker acknowledges that praise means nothing to the recipient. The figure, draped in darkness, leans over a partner with a piercing gaze, declaring that the desire for a reward is perfectly fine as the spirit wedding begins. Light floods the scene, signaling a grand entrance for the one referred to as Sama, who leaves the rest to their subordinate. Reality crashes back into the Ruaro Spirit Marriage Agency, where the atmosphere is far less mystical and far more tedious. Ruaro Urara, a 20-year-old agent, laments the absolute lack of bookings for the current week, the previous week, and even the one before that. He stretches back in his chair, agonizing over a dry spell that has lasted 3 months without a single spirit wedding. Boredom consumes him, and he cries out to his assistant, Mitojo, a spirit wedding actor. Ruaro, dressed in a sharp shirt and tie with his signature gloves, dramatizes the tragedy of living without knowing their wonderful service, striking a pose that highlights his theatrical nature. Memories of the last beautiful ceremony linger in his mind, but they do little to alleviate the current stagnation. Mitojo, looking pragmatic and slightly exasperated, remarks that spirit marriage is a niche industry. Ruaro, undeterred by logic, looms over his assistant, whispering that when the boss starves, the famine affects the employee as well. Mitojo tries to maintain an air of indifference, but Ruaro pounces on his hesitation, producing a small bottle of Lucky Mist, gifted by a Lady Shizuka. With the enthusiasm of a snake oil salesman, Ruaro claims the power of crystals within the mist will fix their energy, though he admits he has no idea what that actually means. Before he can spritz the dubious liquid, the office door creaks open. A tall man with dark hair, a scar near his eye, and a rugged leather jacket steps into the room, immediately recoiling at the scent in the air. He mutters that it smells awful, his face twisting in disgust. Ruaro freezes, the spray bottle still in hand, while Mitojo looks on in surprise. The newcomer, scanning the room with a skeptical eye, asks if this is the Ruaro Spirit Marriage Agency. Ruaro switches instantly to his professional persona, beaming with a smile as he asks if the man is there for a consultation, offering premature congratulations. The man, unamused, grips the perfume bottle Ruaro was holding and crushes it in his gloved hand with a sickening crack, stating flatly that there is nothing congratulatory about his visit. The scene transitions to the explanation of the agency's trade. Ruaro explains that a spirit marriage is a union between the living and the dead. The panel displays various terms associated with the practice: mediums, Emma charms, demonic matchmakers, and the core concept of living ex-dead. Ruaro elaborates that while reasons and methods vary, the basic idea remains a ritual tied to death, sometimes even performed between two dead souls. He notes that the newcomer, identified as Mr. Kahaku, a 34-year-old formwork carpenter, likely understands this. Kahaku sits on a couch, looking uncomfortable, and confirms he understands the premise. He reaches into his jacket and produces a document, stating he has something for Ruaro to inspect. Kahaku places a marriage agreement on the table. The document lists the groom as Kahaku and the bride as Emi Marigold, complete with their birth dates. Kahaku explains that this paper simply showed up about 2 weeks ago. It looks like a normal marriage application, signed by both him and her, but containing nothing else inside the envelope. Kahaku asks if he should treat this as a spirit marriage application, revealing the crucial detail that his ex-girlfriend, Marigold, is dead. Ruaro examines the document with a calm demeanor, asking about the timeline of their relationship. Kahaku, looking away with a shadowed expression, claims they broke up about 2 years ago, though he feigns a lack of memory regarding the specifics. He states that she contracted an incurable disease, and he subsequently dumped her. Ruaro asks if she passed away after that, to which Kahaku agrees. Kahaku's frustration boils over as he clutches his head, questioning what she is trying to pull by sending this junk from the grave, calling it annoying as hell. Ruaro observes him closely, noting the possibility of a posthumous prank, before confirming that Kahaku's intention is to decline this spirit marriage. In a sudden, fluid motion, Ruaro produces a lighter and ignites it. He assures Kahaku that there is no need to worry. If he doesn't need the document, he can simply ignore it. With a cold smile, Waro declares that spirit marriages hold no legal weight and that the document is merely a scribbled piece of paper. He brings the flame to the edge of the marriage form, threatening to destroy it right there in Kahaku's hand. Kahaku reacts violently, shouting in pain as the heat grazes him, yet he does not immediately drop the paper. He yells at Waro to stop, calling the action dangerous. Waro, however, looks unimpressed. He points out that Kahaku could have simply said, "Stop," or "Let go," but instead, he held onto the burning paper. Waro peels back the burnt edge of the paper from Kahaku's glove, revealing that the carpenter's instinct was to protect the document rather than his own hand. Waro admits he thought Kahaku was unsuited for his ceremonies, but this hesitation has piqued his curiosity. He asserts that Kahaku wouldn't have brought the paper all the way to the agency if he didn't care, implying that for better or worse, he still harbors feelings for the deceased woman. Waro's expression shifts to a sly, knowing grin. He suggests they decide together whether to accept the spirit marriage, framing it as an apology for burning Kahaku's hand. He admits he might actually like Kahaku's type. Waro instructs Kahaku to take him to a place with memories of Marigold, prompting a confused reaction from the carpenter. Despite Kahaku's bewilderment, Waro eagerly ushers him out, shouting, "Great. Let's go right now," while Mitojo is left behind to watch the office. Inside Kahaku's car, the atmosphere is tense. Kahaku drives while Waro sits in the passenger seat, critiquing the situation. Waro notes that Kahaku couldn't even recall when they broke up, warning that such vague memories won't make for a good ceremony. He explains that the quality of the ritual depends entirely on the memories of the living. Waro adds a chilling warning: ignoring a spirit marriage isn't always harmless. He gazes out the window, finding people's love lives fascinating, while Kahaku mutters that the agent is creepy. Waro philosophizes that while eternal love might be noble, it doesn't shine the same way to those who keep living. He observes that the dead do not change with time, but the living do, which can turn a static promise like a marriage form into a curse. They arrive at a humble establishment named Arakudo, a buffet-style deli. Kahaku parks the car, and Waro questions the choice of venue, expecting something more mysterious or charming. Kahaku grumbles that Marigold only ate twice a day and calls her a weird woman. Inside, the deli is bustling with trays of food. Waro's eyes light up at the sight of so many side dishes, asking if he can pick whatever he likes. Kahaku, holding a tray, confirms that Marigold used to work here at the counter 4 days a week. Kahaku stands amidst the smell of food, confessing that he didn't have the purest intentions when he started coming here. He admits he came just to see a pretty face. A flashback overlays the present. A younger Kahaku stands at the counter, mesmerized by Marigold, a woman with light hair and a gentle demeanor. He recounts how they eventually started talking, and she would sometimes give him sample dishes. Waro interrupts, shouting that this sounds like love at first sight, not the deep memory he asked for. The flashback continues, showing a moment where Marigold apologizes that a test dish Kahaku liked wasn't on sale that day because the boss wanted to focus on veggie-based meals. Kahaku, looking disappointed, laments the loss of the brown, fried foods he enjoyed. Marigold, with a soft smile, whispers a proposition. If he takes her somewhere nice, she will make him a bento box again. The memory ends with Kahaku agreeing to next time. Back in the present, Waro dissects the memory. He questions if Kahaku's connection was just lust or comfort, suggesting that if so, his feelings might not have been love. Kahaku snaps back, asking what that is supposed to mean. He tries to defend the deli food he bought back then, but Waro cuts him off, stating that the definition of pure love is tricky. Kahaku yells that this isn't helpful coming from a counselor. The scene shifts to the car ride back, or perhaps a continuation of the conversation in a different light. Kahaku admits they didn't do anything special. Marigold loved flowers and always dragged him to parks, which he found boring as hell. He reflects that all of that is gone now: movies, meals, everything. He recalls a specific day when the season seemed wrong, and she told him she was sick. He remembers the fear that she wouldn't heal, that she could die anytime. Mitojo, having rejoined them or speaking from the back seat, catches a contradiction. He points out that Kahaku previously said he dumped her. Mitojo accuses him of changing his story. Kahaku is flustered, but the truth spills out. Waro presses him, asking why he didn't marry her and why he let go. Kahaku reveals the painful reality. Marigold said she didn't want to become his burden. He told her, "Let's get married," proposing to her in the face of her illness. Kahaku stares out at the cityscape, admitting that whether she felt the same was another story. He thought they would stay together until the end. He brings up the marriage form again, realizing that he must have let on that he noticed her deterioration. He saw her getting thinner and paler. He confesses that he was the one who wrote the marriage form first and handed it to her. He wanted her to know that even if she changed, he wouldn't abandon her. The tragedy of the situation crystallizes for Kahaku. He asks why she would send it back now, after death. He looks at the names on the paper again, Kahaku and Emi Marigold. He feels like she is telling him he was wrong. He interprets the arrival of the form as a messed up message, thinking he had respected her wishes by letting her go. He clenches his fist, revealing that she wouldn't even let him hold her ashes. Ruaro, listening to this outpouring of grief and confusion, suddenly lights his lighter again with a fwoom sound. Kahaku yells, asking why the hell he's doing that. Ruaro calmly states that complicated emotions are hard for him to process and that he lacks the ability to fall in love. Kahaku screams at him not to start fires in the park and calls him an idiot counselor who can't read the room. Ruaro, undeterred, asks if Kahaku is angry and if that means he doesn't want the marriage anymore. He demands Kahaku be clear when he speaks. Ruaro softens slightly, admitting he was joking. He holds up the document, observing that this piece of paper holds two clumsy kinds of love. He admits he can't understand it, but he can accept it. He questions if Kahaku's earlier proposal was born out of pity and if that was the guilt he sensed. He asks if holding the spirit wedding would satisfy Marigold. Ruaro delivers the final verdict. The dead don't tell you whether your choices were right. He warns Kahaku that even if he goes through with the ceremony, his life won't change. The decision must be based on whether Kahaku wants to feel joy again. Ruaro leans in, asking Kahaku to picture Marigold's smile and determine if he feels regret or relief. He asks if, on the day the flowers bloom again, Kahaku could understand the feeling of seeing the smile of the woman he loved. Kahaku closes his eyes, struggling with the weight of the question. He slams his hand down on a stack of books or papers, making a loud impact sound. With a determined expression, he declares, "Let's do it. The spirit marriage." He asserts that nothing beats it and it's a damn good feeling. Ruaro's demeanor instantly shifts from philosophical to ecstatic. He promises the finest spirit wedding. Kahaku thanks him, though he looks exhausted. Ruaro, now brimming with energy, scolds Kahaku for looking unmotivated. He assures the carpenter that he will help decide everything. Kahaku, overwhelmed, says he will leave the details to Ruaro. Mitojo pops up with materials, urging Kahaku to take a look. Ruaro begins rattling off a massive list of preparations: venue, budget, theme, outfits, decorations, reception, menu, floral arrangements, hairstyles, and photos. The chapter ends with the team diving headfirst into the chaotic planning of the ceremony. The dimly lit, elegant office of the Rashiku Ghost Marriage Agency, where the proprietor, a sharp-eyed man named Rashiku, stands beside a whiteboard outlining the intricacies of his unique trade. He presents the concept with theatrical flair to his client, a dark-haired man named Kahaku, explaining that the ghost wedding is a method he personally devised. Rashiku details the process. The agency appoints a stand-in for the deceased, holds a mock ceremony, and allows the living to vow genuine love to the departed. He gestures to the board which lists what is a ghost marriage, benefits, methods and rules, and issues, clarifying that this rite holds no legal weight and does not resurrect the dead. Instead, it provides a temporary, immersive experience of marrying the dead. Rashiku offers tea to his guests, asking Kahaku if he takes milk, to which the distracted client agrees. Rashiku smiles charmingly, suggesting they discuss the arrangements over lunch to honor how the couple first met. Kahaku sits on a plush sofa opposite Rashiku, while a silent, long-haired female assistant named Mitojo sits beside him. Kahaku expresses a lack of interest in a ceremony, wishing to keep things simple. Rashiku presses him on the reception style, asking if he pictures a formal event with guests laid out in rows or a dainty fine dining experience with forks and knives. Kahaku recoils at the thought of a complicated Tokyo-style wedding, reiterating his desire for simplicity. Sensing the client's hesitation, Rashiku pivots, offering a choice between fancy fine dining or Lady Marigold's cooking. The mention of the specific name catches Kahaku's attention instantly. Rashiku suggests a park venue, noting that Kahaku was likely about to suggest the same. Kahaku worries about the season, concerned that the flowers aren't blooming yet, but Rashiku assures him they will manage the impossible. The conversation shifts to outfits, and Mitojo silently observes the exchange. The mood in the room grows heavy as the focus turns to the contract. Kahaku hunches over the low table, sweat beading on his forehead, and argues that the ceremony is unnecessary, viewing the transaction as merely a contract or a policy. He questions if signing the ghost marriage certificate isn't enough. Rashiku, holding a fountain pen, counters with professional firmness, stating that the ceremony is mandatory if he is to be hired. He leans back, explaining that dropping a large sum of money on a meaningless ceremony is the point. There is no downside because it isn't a legal system, making it easy to perform. He argues that in the worst case, simply saying, "we'll do it," validates the intent. Rashiku creates a sharp snap sound as he uncaps a seal or a small container, emphasizing the gravity of the ritual. He demands Kahaku's hand, inspecting a healed wound, and challenges the client to show that his love isn't half-hearted. Rashiku leans in close, his gaze piercing, declaring that they call it a ghost marriage because they swear to the dead without permission, requiring absolute sincerity from the living. He posits that the more resolve the maker brings to their love, the more interesting the result will be. Rashiku presents the certificate, acknowledging that while they cannot physically recreate Marigold's cooking, the wedding offers a chance to feel each other's love again. He suggests asking Lady Marigold to be selfish for once. Kahaku admits he doesn't cook and doesn't know the recipes, but he remembers Marigold telling him how she made things. The scene solidifies the roles: groom Gua Kahaku and bride Fanjiang Marigold. A flashback sequence takes over the narrative, painting the grim reality of Kahaku's past. He walks through a city street, recalling how he contacted a mutual acquaintance to confirm that Marigold had indeed died. The memory of receiving the marriage form burns in his mind. It felt like a jab or a punishment for abandoning someone who was sick. He envisions the marriage certificate stamped with the character for marriage. He walks past bustling shops, his expression sullen, remembering how he justified leaving her by telling himself she would suffer less if he wasn't there. He admits he could have kept lying to himself, but the truth gnaws at him. The flashback continues to a lonely night where Kahaku sits outside a convenience store, eating a prepackaged bento bowl under the moonlight. He realizes that if she were alive anywhere, that would have been enough, but now he is left with a void. He yearns to feel that love again, viewing the ghost marriage as a chance to reclaim what was lost. He stares at the cheap meal, the price tag of 9,000 yen visible in his memory or imagination, emphasizing the contrast between the cheap food and the expensive ritual he is about to undertake. The narrative returns to the present preparation phase. Kahaku arrives at the agency carrying a paper bag containing the lunchboxes they used back then. He encounters Mitojo, the assistant who will play the role of Marigold. She stands tall and impassive in a sharp suit. Kahaku remarks bluntly that she doesn't look like Marigold at all. He hands over the old lunchboxes, unsure if they are still usable. Mitojo questions if he is sure about this ghost marriage thing. Kahaku, desperate and vulnerable, grabs the fabric of her jacket, pleading with her to make him believe the lie, to let him experience the real thing one more time. Mitojo looks down at him, her expression unreadable but tinged with a strange intensity. Later, inside a domestic kitchen setting provided by the agency, Mitojo stands with her long hair flowing, while Kahaku observes her. The atmosphere disorients him. He clutches his head, feeling the room spin. He attributes the dizziness to being busy and worn out lately. He collapses to the floor, his vision blurring. From the ground, he looks up at Mitojo, apologizing for intruding while she was eating. He wonders if the look in her eyes is pity or empathy, questioning what thoughts she could possibly have about him. A voice cuts through the haze, commanding someone to come here. In a private preparation room, Rashiku tends to Mitojo, who sits passively as he adjusts her appearance. He touches her neck and face with gloved hands, speaking in cryptic, philosophical terms about sharing what was lost and feelings they didn't know. He praises her performance, noting that when everything becomes words, her gestures and gaze bring the act to life. He confesses that he loves her acting. Rashiku holds a small vial or applicator, telling her to look a little happy as he offers her a dessert. He commands her to open up. In a shocking revelation of her true nature, Mitojo opens her mouth wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged, non-human teeth, confirming the supernatural undercurrent of the agency. Rashiku acknowledges that praise doesn't interest her, but urges her to do a great job to earn her reward. The scene shifts to the grand unveiling of the ghost wedding. The venue is a traditional courtyard with a pavilion, transformed into a stunning, otherworldly space. Flowers bloom in profusion despite the season, a detail that shocks Kahaku as he arrives dressed in a formal, traditional groom's outfit. He wonders if he is dreaming or if this is extraordinary luck. Rashiku stands in the background, signaling that he leaves the rest to the couple. Kahaku walks toward the altar, adjusting his bangs, but as he stands alone in the opulent setting, the reality of the situation crashes down on him. He feels the emptiness acutely. Standing there alone only amplifies the fact that Marigold is not truly there. The loneliness hits Kahaku like a physical blow, described as sharp and bright. He stands by the railing, looking out at the unnatural blooms, questioning what he is even doing there. Suddenly, a figure appears in the distance. Rashiku's voice is heard warning the bride to mind the step. Kahaku turns, his eyes widening in disbelief. He sees the hat lady, Mitojo, transformed into the spitting image of a traditional bride, wearing a magnificent headdress and veil. The caption announces the Rashiku ghost wedding, with groom Kahaku and bride Fanjiang Marigold. Kahaku stares, wondering if this intense reaction is just lust or love at first sight all over again. The bride, now fully embodying Marigold, stands before him in the pavilion. Kahaku questions his reality, asking if it is a dream. The bride speaks gently, presenting the dishes laid out on the table as handmade by Lady Marigold. She invites him to enjoy the meal at his leisure and offers to bring alternatives if there are any ingredients he dislikes. Kahaku, flustered and blushing, stammers that it is fine. The bride begins to list the menu items, each one a specific memory: chicken, omelette with daikon, tea egg braised with star anise and pork ribs, and fried shishamo. Kahaku picks up his chopsticks, trembling slightly. He recognizes every single dish. He describes the preparation style: marinated, then steamed, then simmered, as he lifts a piece of meat to his mouth. As he eats, tears stream down his face. He realizes that eating all of this now will sit heavy in his stomach, but that heaviness is exactly what he has been missing. He notes that it has been so long that the heaviness feels nostalgic. He cries openly, acknowledging that these are all the rejected flavors he loved, the imperfect cooking that defined their life together. As the meal continues, Kahaku engages in an internal monologue with the memory of Marigold. He wonders if they were wrong in how they handled their end. He realizes they didn't have to cherry-pick only the good parts to remember. He affirms that he didn't need to forget the illness or the anger. He left because he loved her, and he realizes that even now, he still feels that way. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the couple as they sit at the table. Kahaku asks the phantom across from him to tell him that she loved him, even just a little. In the final moments of the ceremony, Kahaku finds a sense of closure. He wonders if he should be glad she chose him in the end, referencing the marriage slip that caused him so much pain. He muses that if the slip was a jab at him, it's almost funny. He decides to hope that it is true, that she chose him, so he can carry the joy of her having been in his life. The chapter concludes with the image of the bride and groom in silhouette, the ritual complete, leaving Kahaku with a mix of grief and gratitude. The spirit wedding ceremony reaches its ethereal conclusion as the officiant's voice announces the closure of the ritual. With a finality that hangs heavy in the air, the attendees are told that once they leave the hall, everything ends. A solemn warning accompanies their departure. No matter what happens, they must not look back. The bride and groom, clad in traditional, ornate ceremonial robes that seem to shimmer with a ghostly luminescence, turn away from the altar. They walk forward, their figures bathed in a blinding, otherworldly light, maintaining a stoic and regal composure as they exit the sacred space, leaving the realm of the spirits behind them. Once safely in the shadows of the backstage area, the mystical facade instantly shatters. The groom, a sharp-eyed young man, wipes the sweat from his brow, his expression shifting from solemnity to relief as he asks if that was merely a dream. Standing beside him, the bride, now looking sharp and professional, sheds her spectral aura. The groom crosses his arms, his posture relaxing as he commends their performance, thanking her for a job well done. It becomes clear that this was an elaborate orchestration, a service provided to bridge the gap between worlds. The narrative shifts to the groom's internal reflection on the nature of affection. To him, love is nothing more than fiction. He clarifies that this view isn't born of longing or idealism, but rather resembles gazing at a flawless, untouched view. It is a distant, aesthetic appreciation of something that remains just out of reach, perfect only because it is unblemished by reality. Elsewhere, the client, a dark-haired man named Kuju, stands by a window, the memory of the ceremony lingering in his mind. He confesses to himself that the experience wasn't what he anticipated. A smirk plays on his lips as he remarks on the eerie precision of the actors, feeling as though they had crawled inside his head to extract his deepest desires. He confronts the duality of his emotions. He had been told the spirit marriage wouldn't change anything, a statement he now views as a lie. Despite the deception, a profound terror grips him. His mind drifts to the past, to the woman he lost. He recalls the desperation of wanting her to stay with him. He remembers the common platitudes spoken by those close to death, claiming that nothing they do matters anymore. The memory of her voice cuts through him. She had lamented her condition, not wanting to waste the remainder of his life tethered to her rotting shell. She had been terrified that he would eventually watch her fall apart with disgust. She had confessed that if she could move, she would have run away to spare him the pain. Weighed down by these memories, the client reconciles his grief with the service he just purchased. He admits that having this day, this fabricated union, felt better than having nothing at all. He contemplates the misery of a life with nothing to look forward to. A pang of regret strikes him as he wonders if he should have been more selfish in the past. He questions what Marigold was thinking when she sent that final note, resigning himself to the fact that he will never stop wondering about her true thoughts. Back in the present, the protagonist asks the client if the spirit marriage was everything he had hoped for. The scene reveals a photograph of the client and the spirit bride, sitting together, holding champagne glasses in a sunlit garden, smiling radiantly. The client affirms that it feels perfect. The image captures a moment of fabricated bliss, a service rendered by the Rashiku Spirit Marriage Agency. The scene transitions abruptly to the physical toll of the job. The protagonist, now dressed in casual work clothes, labors in a garden, lamenting that he hasn't done something this physical in ages. He reviews the photos from the ceremony, pleased with the outcome. As he plants flowers, he grumbles about the difficulty of the task, noting that he totally underestimated the effort required. His muscles scream in protest, and he admits he barely has any stamina to begin with. Despite the exhaustion, he concedes that the effort was worth it as he completes the watering. He notes the necessity of maintenance but appreciates that the park offers rental plots for his use. Returning to his base of operations, the protagonist peels off his work gloves, calling out to Motoyo and thanking her for running an errand. He comments that her help makes the cleaning easier, anticipating another quiet day. However, as he steps into the room, the atmosphere shifts. He freezes, his eyes locking onto a figure standing in his hallway. A tall, older man with a scar over one eye and slicked-back white hair stands holding a vase of flowers. He looms over the protagonist, an unsettling smile on his face as he murmurs, "Beautiful corpse." The protagonist stares in bewilderment as the stranger inspects him. The intruder remarks that for a dead body, the face looks way too alive. He leans in closer, invading the protagonist's personal space, and physically pokes his cheek to test the skin's elasticity. The stranger continues his invasive assessment, wondering how the body stays upright and speculating about the use of supports. He marvels at the makeup and the difficulty of dressing the body, praising the skill of the young funeral director. The protagonist, terrified and confused, finally snaps, shouting in shock as the stranger touches him. The stranger is genuinely surprised, asking if the protagonist takes this thing out in public without anyone noticing. Realizing the misunderstanding, the protagonist recoils, grabbing a weapon for defense, and clarifies that this isn't a shop. He demands to know who the intruder is. The stranger, unfazed, apologizes for barging in, claiming he saw the spirit marriage sign and wandered in. He introduces himself as Reika of the corpse house. He notes the protagonist's idleness and comments that spirit marriage is old-fashioned and weird these days, with hardly anyone doing it. The protagonist connects the name Reika to Sharia, corpse house, realizing the man deals with the dead. Reika pivots immediately to business. He proposes a collaboration, offering to connect the protagonist with clients looking for spirit marriages. He explains that he deals strictly in the dead. He argues that the protagonist's potential clients simply cannot find him, but the demand still exists. Reika describes his role as becoming the hands and feet of the motionless corpses, helping them forge connections. To illustrate his point, Reika presents a diagram of his services. He helps families find partners for their deceased children. He explains that requirements are flexible, often involving joint burial arrangements. He details the specifics, finding partners for the deceased, handling burial timing, checking compatibility, and designing graves. He emphasizes that wealthy or high-status deceased individuals are in high demand, and the compensation reflects that. Reika reveals the absurdity of the requests he receives. Clients verify cleanliness, health, height, and income, treating the selection process like a high-stakes dating app for the afterlife. He complains that everyone is picky, refusing to compromise on their requirements. He cites examples of ridiculous requests, such as finding a husband to put a haunting spirit to rest. Reika then corners the protagonist with a special offer. He guarantees that his corpses are completely clean and provided with full family consent. He assures the protagonist that identity, freshness, and appearance are all guaranteed. He frames the work as noble, claiming it connects human hearts and helps people find happiness. He leans in, asking what the protagonist thinks of the proposal. The protagonist's expression flattens into a look of disdain. He rejects the offer outright. He reveals that his spirit weddings use actors as stand-ins, not corpses. More importantly, he declares a moral boundary. He will not bind the living and the dead without love. Reika is unimpressed. He calls the protagonist's stance boring and feigns disinterest. He mocks the protagonist's idealism, quoting that dead men tell no tales, and suggesting that the love the protagonist values could all be lies. He challenges the protagonist, asking how he can be sure the couples actually loved each other. He questions if the protagonist is honestly not desecrating their memory by performing these ceremonies. Reika's demeanor shifts to a chilling pragmatism. He states that he has never had a single complaint because the dead don't talk. He clarifies his philosophy. He adores the living who cling and scream for connections that will never come. He calls spirit marriage nothing more than the living's prayer, a selfish desire. He dismisses the idea of connecting souls as impossible. Reika admits he is no therapist or saint. He simply picks and chooses from other people's misery. He asserts that if he cared about the dead's true intentions, he wouldn't be in this line of work. He ironically calls himself sincere and passionate for his honesty. The protagonist, disgusted, orders him to leave. As Reika turns to exit, he acknowledges the rejection but leaves a parting gift. He claims to give his clients everything he has to get what he wants. He pauses at the door, noting the protagonist's weakness for love stories. He drops a pair of tickets on the table. He tells the protagonist that for a passionate man like him, he has the perfect case, a girl willing to die for love. He offers this first case with no charge, appealing to the protagonist's curiosity and skill as an undertaker. A stage bathed in dramatic lighting, where the final act of a tragedy unfolds. A performer, dressed in the elaborate, sweeping robes of a traditional opera consort, raises a cup with trembling hands. She sings of her life's end, her voice carrying the weight of a final farewell to her king. She declares that with the enemy advancing and her beloved gone, there is no reason to linger in the world of the living. The lyrics speak of war songs echoing from all sides, a suffocating reality closing in on her. On the stage, the consort draws a prop sword, her painted face a mask of tragic resolve. She proclaims to the silent audience that she shall devote herself solely to love. In the viewing box, Reika, the corpse broker, leans back with a satisfied smirk, explaining the narrative to his companion. He details the historical context. A king and his consort, surrounded by enemies, share a farewell cup. The king had pleaded with her to survive, even if it meant serving another man as a prisoner. Reika reveals that this performance is his very first play, a tragedy of parting by death. He notes the irony of the ending. Despite the king's plea, the consort refuses to live on. Instead, she chooses to take her own life, defying the command to survive in favor of preserving her devotion. Reika muses aloud, questioning whether dying to protect one's love actually counts as protection at all, finding a twisted admiration in the way they lived. Beside him, Rorio, the undertaker, is visibly moved, tears streaming down his face as he admits he enjoyed the performance. He notes that the bad ending hits hard precisely because it is one of the most popular tragic plays in classical theater history. However, his sentimental moment is cut short as he abruptly shifts gears, claiming he only needs to run the story over in his head for work. Matoyo, seated silently next to him, observes with a detached gaze. The scene transitions to a private dining area within the theater. Reika, ever the gracious host, offers tea and compliments Rorio's actor, Motoyo, noting how she has captivated him completely. Rorio snaps back, reminding Reika that he is there to work and only came because the case sounded interesting. He tries to decline Reika's offer of food, but Reika insists, claiming that wasting good food, good seats, and good theater would be a shame. He urges them to order whatever they like, telling Rorio it is on him. Rorio attempts to refuse on Motoyo's behalf, but she is already digging into a heaping bento box labeled Loaded Marigold Bento. Reika raises an eyebrow, suggesting that Rorio deciding what she eats borders on moral abuse. Rorio defends his strict control, explaining that he made her eat too much at the last ceremony and now intends to let her body rest. He asserts that Motoyo will only listen to him, no matter how sweetly Reika talks to her. He adds a philosophical weight to his control, stating that eating is placing one's life in the hands of whoever serves the food. Dinner concludes, and Rorio signals it is time to get going. He asks if they are about to meet the client. Reika corrects him, stating they will meet the person himself. Rorio, confused, asks if there is a body in the theater or if a family member works there. Reika clarifies that of course there isn't a body, the client is very much alive. Rorio is taken aback, having assumed Reika only dealt with the dead. He sarcastically asks if Reika is about to claim a ghost will materialize. Reika, sensing Rorio's growing unease, notes that Rorio is sensitive to the scent of death. Walking through the backstage corridors lined with dressing room guides, Rorio admits he didn't bring any get-well gifts because he assumed the client was a corpse. Reika mentions casually that the client works with incense wood. As they approach the dressing room, Reika explains the client's unique situation. It isn't that her love is unrequited, but rather that it will never be returned. She has declared that if she cannot get married, she will die and have a spirit wedding instead. Rorio interprets this grimly. She wants to die just so she can marry. Rorio stops, his expression hardening. He argues that a spirit wedding cannot replace a real marriage. He insists that marrying someone who is already dead is fundamentally different from dying in order to marry them. He defines marriage as an institution that provides social and emotional benefits, whereas dying means losing everything. Reika half agrees, acknowledging that spirit marriage has its pros in its own way, but he accepts Rorio's objection. Reika's demeanor shifts to a colder, more nihilistic tone. He describes the aftermath of death. All that remains are empty corpses that won't whisper love or offer devotion. He lists what is lost: friends, memories, money, status, and even one's own heart. He posits that death is essentially someone else's problem, as the only ones who feel anger, grief, or love are the living. He argues that once you strip a person of their body or dignity, they won't care because they lack the function to think otherwise. Reika turns his gaze to Rorio, challenging his profession. He accuses Rorio's job of being nothing more than making people believe a lie. He points out that once the dead are gone, you never know if their wish really came true. He instructs Rorio to simply send the client off, feeling good. Rorio stares at him, horrified, realizing the implication. Reika is asking him to facilitate a suicide. They arrive at the door. A voice from inside calls out, "Reika-sensei." Reika opens the door, thanking the occupant for making time for them. The person inside, still dressed in full theatrical costume, turns to greet them, saying she has been waiting. Rorio freezes. The client is the actor who played the consort. Reika introduces Rorio as the consultant he mentioned, chiding Rorio-kun to mind his manners. The consort, with her elaborate headdress and heavy stage makeup, laughs softly. Reika compliments her performance earlier as wonderful. The room is dazzling, filled with light and floral arrangements, but the atmosphere is thick with tension. The consort reveals her true nature immediately. She states her only wish is precisely what she enacted on stage. Without warning, the consort draws a sword. It is the same prop she used on stage, but the glint of the metal suggests something far more dangerous. She recites her line again, "I shall devote myself solely to love." Rorio watches, confused, asking what exactly she is doing. Her expression twists into a beatific, almost manic smile as she brings the blade closer to her own neck. Rorio lunges forward. He grabs the blade with his bare hand, stopping its motion just inches from her skin. Blood drips from his fingers. He shouts in disbelief, "That's real?" He glares at her, his usual composure cracking. He scolds her for being too hasty. He declares that as long as his actor is put in danger, he will not cooperate at all. He demands she put the sword away. The consort looks at him, her eyes wide with a mix of madness and disappointment. She murmurs that she had been looking forward to this day. Rorio, now bleeding, demands to know what on earth is going on. Reika, standing back and observing the chaos, confirms that this isn't fiction but real. Rorio realizes he has been walked into a trap. He questions what Reika expects him to do with a fictional tragic ending made real. Reika reminds him of his instructions: make the consort's spirit wedding successful. The scene shifts slightly as the consort turns back to her mirror. She touches her cheek, perhaps smearing Rorio's blood on her skin, or simply checking her reflection. She whispers, "The one she loves is still here." She seems to be checking for the presence of the character she plays, or perhaps the spirit she wishes to become. She asks, "How about now?" and then answers herself, "Too bad. Still here." Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room changes. The manic energy dissipates. The consort turns around, and her expression has softened, the intense, possessed look gone. Tears stream down her face, ruining her makeup. She speaks in a different tone, "My beloved consort." She seems to have vanished. Reika, observing this shift, smiles and remarks, "Interesting, isn't it?" The living woman remains, but the spirit she sought to marry, or become, has retreated, leaving Rorio and Reika to navigate the aftermath of a ritual that blurred the line between performance and reality.